But it does take some amount of self-confidence to be able to say that, right? You know that you've got other things going on. You're not desperate to be able to, take every offer that comes along. Do you ever have self-doubt?
Yes, I do all the time. All the time, because even last week I took a writing appointment with somebody that was a Zoom write. Um, and let me just tell you, Heidi, this person was so dang famous. I had no idea. I didn't look at the link the person who connected us had sent to me until about 2 hours before. But I always try to do a little bit of, when I don't know the person, I try to do a little bit of background, make sure I know who I'm talking to. When I clicked it on, I was like, oh my gosh. And I ran out to where my husband was and I went, this is who I'm riding with in 45 minutes. And he went, oh my gosh. And this guy's a really famous screenwriter in New York. And I mean, super famous, Heidi. Like, I don't even know how I got in the room with this guy. And for a second, I was
Because you're
like,
Leslie Satcher.
no, I don't know. I have a sweet friend who connected us. But for a second, I was like, what am I going to say to this guy? And he popped up on the screen. He had this giant painting behind him. I'm a painter and I'm a huge fan of art. And I started talking about his painting. And I'm like, I love that painting. And he showed me some more stuff. And then I said, hey, man, I just had this little snippet. You want to hear it? And he goes, yeah. And we were off and running. And in 3 hours, we were done. And he, see you, nice to meet you, click, we're off. And I was like, okay. And it was like, that happened. And it was a great 3 hours of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what will come from it. So, I mean, I was intimidated, Heidi. I was like, I was dreading it. I was like, oh no, what have I done? I've jumped off in this deep end with this guy and he's famous. And what am I going to say? Well, everybody's kind of the same when you sit down at the writing table. Everybody has a piece of paper and a pencil and a guitar or whatever. You just lay all that other stuff aside and you just sit there and go to writing.
Well, for me, I don't think I have the self doubt that you have when you start out earlier. And part of it is because every year I keep a notebook full of ideas that I've gathered all year. And so if I'm going to get together to write with somebody, I have these notebooks full of ideas. And I also can play a guitar pretty good. So
He's great.
I know I'm going to bring something into the writing appointment. If they don't like anything that I've done, then I remember one guy ran 15 or 20 ideas by him and he didn't like any of them. And I thought, well, I don't think we're going to click together, because he didn't bring any in. It's like, I'm doing the work here and you're going, nope, I don't like that. I don't like that. And what's funny is a couple of the titles that I ran by him ended up being hits for other people later on that somebody else wrote. So you never know, but you just know it didn't bring up self-doubt to me. It brought up, well, if he doesn't really care about what I'm coming up with groove-wise or lyric-wise or title-wise, then I need to find somebody that will be excited about what I bring them.
Yeah,
Well, and
absolutely.
for Kent and I both, writing is a spiritual experience
Mm-hmm.
for Kent and I both. And I mean, I believe the great songs that are given to me come from God. I believe it. I think Kent feels the same way. I mean, it's a spiritual experience, and we're very guarded with it now. And I'm learning to be more guarded because I learned that from Kent. It's a precious thing to have this gift to be able to write. And so it's like Kent said, you keep throwing it out, throwing it out, throwing it, they don't connect. It doesn't mean that they're not a good person or anything. It just
Right.
means we're not in the same spot they're in. So we need to quit wasting daylight and just go, okay, thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Because then you'll, go down the road and Zoom with some cat in New York City and click right away, you know? So,
Yeah, I mean, I've
I
had a similar experience, certainly not in songwriting, but I've had an experience, and sometimes I realize that I was learning that whole time. Nothing
yes.
tangible came out of that joint experience, but it doesn't mean it was a waste of time because at some point in the future, either something they said or even the way they made me feel in that moment, there's something that I take away. And for me, that's I don't know. I think I'm a hopeless optimist, right? I'm always glass half full. And even in a really lousy experience like that, I try to say, well, what can I learn from it? But I think that's probably a way that we can all think about collaboration itself is in the best of times, it results in something tangible for you as this hit song and it gets recorded, et cetera. But there might be other ways for us to think about what we get out of collaboration as well.
Well, the other thing you can get out of collaboration is, like you were saying, you're with somebody and it doesn't really seem like it clicks. but you go back and you look at why it didn't click and what could I have done to maybe make it click better. And the next time you're in a situation like that, you're more open to, okay, let me see if I can change the energy on this to get it to click with whoever I'm with. And that can change the whole energy in the room too when you bring that in there. But it's also like, well, I see what didn't click, and maybe I won't bring that into another room from what I was bringing in. I mean, there was one girl that I wrote with that was a great songwriter, but when I would get together and write with her, and she didn't even know she was doing this, when I would throw out the ideas on the song she was working with on, she'd go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. And it finally got where I don't like her saying I don't like that, you know? And so what I took from it was when I'm with other songwriters, I'm going to encourage them. I'm not going to sit there and say, I don't like that. I'm going to like that. Well, can we come up with something better? Can we look at it another way? So by that collaboration that really didn't work, it let me go into the next room and go, I am not going to ever do that. And like she says, I'm going to bring in a positive attitude to it. And no matter where the song's going, I'm going to try to steer it in that way and not be the one who's busting the vibe on the whole thing.
And let me add, if I might add this, Heidi, Kent and I one time had a writing appointment with a young artist who actually, she did cut one of these songs that we wrote. We didn't write it with her, but it was another song. But she had a record deal and she came in. And one of the things that sometimes about a songwriting co-write, and even I have an artist who's a fine artist, who's a painter, and she tells me this kind of happens as well when you're in a painting situation with someone. Sometimes people just need you to listen to them. Maybe there's not even a song isn't even going to be written.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just in a moment where they're overwhelmed or they're confused or they're scared because they just got to Nashville or whatever. Sometimes they just want to talk and you just need to listen to them. And you might write down the road, but that first initial meeting turns into kind of a therapy session a little bit. Well, this young girl was with us, and she had already, I think she'd had one or two hits, but she was sitting there and she was just kind of droned out, Heidi. And we were like, is she okay? And she was just sitting there sort of wide-eyed. And finally Kent said, are you okay? And she said, oh yeah. And he said, well, why don't we stop and have a break for lunch? Because he's famous for that. If stuff stalls, we like have a bite of lunch and everybody gets some, gets their blood sugar up and we go again.
Because songwriters are all starving. So.
Right. Well, when we broke for lunch, she goes, oh, I'm eating what?
I'm on an artist diet.
I'm on an artist diet. And she pulls out, Heidi, this little teeny tiny box. I'm not even kidding. It had like 3 green beans in it, a couple of little things, 2 little tiny squares of turkey. I mean, it was tiny.
And a couple carrots.
And a couple little teeny carrots. And we were like, is that all you're going to eat? And she goes, that's all I can eat. And it turned out she was hungry. Now, it was a simple thing. She was hungry. Kent said, you need to eat a hot dog. You need to eat. You can't create when you're so like your body isn't even in a creative space, right? And so she was like, I guess I didn't even think about that. That's what was wrong with her the whole time. It wasn't our ideas or that she didn't like the music. She was hungry. So we fed her some food and we wrote a song that day with her. She actually cut one of our songs, not one we wrote with her, but she did cut it. And so that was kind of an eye-opener for me that sometimes people are going through something and that, I heard this old saying about everyone you know is going through something you know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
That comes into play a lot in a co-writing session, Heidi, or a creative situation.
Sure.
A lot of times, because Ken is such a great listener and I try to be a listener, people will, it becomes a therapy session. They'll just pour their little hearts out to us. Sometimes we write a song out of it.
Exactly.
We're terrible. We could write about that.
Well, the great Harlan Howard,
imagine.
one of the most famous writers in Nashville, one of his things was, I love to write with a co-writer going through a divorce because I get all the great ideas without any of the pain.
Talk about living vicariously and making the most of it.
It's terrible, but true.